Hi everybody, it's to see you again. How are we all today? Okay, we're going back to this book, The Treasury of Animal Stories, because there's a nice one in here which I want to read you about how the rhinoceros got his skin. Once upon a time, by the shores of the Red Sea, there lived a young man named Mani, who wore a wonderful hat that reflected the rays of the sun. Mani owned nothing more than his hat, his knife, and his piping hot cooking stove. One day he took flour and water and currants and nutmeg and sugar and plums and made himself an enormous cake, 2 feet across and 3 feet thick. He put it on to cook on his piping hot stove and cooked it until it was a golden brown and smelled most sensational. But just as he was going to eat it, there came down to the beach a rhinoceros. He had a big horn on his nose, 2 piggy eyes, and very few manners. In those days, the rhinoceros's skin fitted him snugly and tightly, with no wrinkles in it anywhere. All the same, he had no manners then, and he has no manners now, and he never will have any manners. Grunt went the rhinoceros, and Mani left the cake and shot up the nearest palm tree. Then the rhinoceros tipped over the cooking stove with the end of his nose and gobbled up the cake. When he had finished eating, he went away, waving his tail behind him. Mani came down from his palm tree and put the stove on his legs again. Them that takes cakes with the great Mani bakes makes dreadful mistakes. And he meant it. 5 weeks later, there was a heat wave in the Red Sea, and everybody took off all their clothes. Mani took off his hat, and the rhinoceros took off his skin and carried it over his shoulder as he came down to the beach to bathe. In those days, it buttoned underneath with 3 buttons, just like a coat. He passed Mani and said nothing at all about the cake, as he never had any manners then, now, or henceforward. The rhinoceros waddled straight into the water and blew bubbles through his nose, leaving his skin on the beach. Mani waited and waited until he was sure the rhinoceros wasn't watching. Then he rushed to his camp and filled his hat with cake crumbs, and he took that skin, and he took that skin, and he scrubbed that skin, and he rubbed that skin, full of old, dry, stale, tickly cake crumbs, as much as it would hold. When he had done, he climbed to the top of his palm tree and waited for the rhinoceros to come out of the water and put it on. And the rhinoceros did. He buttoned it up with the 3 buttons, and straight away it began to tickle him. He wanted to scratch, but it made it worse. Then he lay down on the sand and rolled, and every time he rolled, the cake crumbs tickled him worse and worse. He ran to the palm tree and rubbed himself against it. He rubbed so hard that he rubbed his skin into great folds over his shoulders, and another fold underneath, and he rubbed his 3 buttons right off. Then he rubbed some more folds into his legs until he was quite out of temper. But it didn't make the least difference to the cake crumbs. They were right inside his skin, and oh, how it tickled. So the rhinoceros went home very angry and horribly scratchy. And from that day to this, every rhinoceros has great folds in his skin and a very bad temper.